I got all I want, and I got all I need, and I got everything. I got you and me. All I want, I got all I
The conflict episode. If you've been in a relationship, you've definitely run into some conflict, whether it be relationship with parents, siblings, friends, frenemies, coworkers, bosses, or even a spouse. Conflict obviously is a part of relationships. Oftentimes it means it represents some sort of difficulty in the communication. Oftentimes represents a distance in the connection, a difference in perspective. So we've got difficulty, distance, difference. Oftentimes when I'm talking with people who are struggling to hear one another, to be connected with one another, to understand one another, I'm often finding that it almost feels like they're telling two different stories. And, one of them is looking at the issue at hand from a certain perspective. So they're looking at it from either a male or a female perspective, which, obviously informs how they're thinking about it. They're thinking about it from the perspective of their family of origin, how conflict was either represented to them, positive or negative, how their parents moved through conflict, and the impact that their parents and the conflict that they modeled is having. Sometimes it is impacted by personality, different personality traits, whether it be openness or conscientiousness or neuroticism, or even extroversion. Lots of different personalities and differences in personality will create a difficulty in seeing through the same lens or kind of matching the story that your partner is expressing. Values and values expression can be a huge source of conflict, where one person wants to order the values a certain way and another wants to value them a different way, or at the same time, maybe the values align, right? So we've got them in the same order, but how we want to express those things based on who we are, based on where we come from, might be very different. And so values and values expression can create this feeling that we're not on the same page, right? Like we're telling a different story, or at least a different part of the story. Perspective. Everybody is entitled to their opinion, and everybody has a perspective. If social media has taught us anything about people, it's that they have lots of opinions and everybody's got a perspective. And so hearing and understanding and connecting with your partner's perspective and understanding their opinions may very well cause a conflict, cause a rift. So obviously you and your spouse are probably experiencing some form of conflict even right now, or it's just happened before, or you could maybe even just think about a time when you were in conflict, whether it be this morning, last week, or any other time. Conflict is one of those things that comes up all the time in marriage therapy, because most people who are struggling in their marriages find that conflict is one of those dynamics, one of those markers, and maybe even a buzzword for disconnection. So they're finding this conflict thing. They're calling it conflict. They're calling it fighting. They're calling it all sorts of dirty words that basically just mean we're disconnected. And that's actually what I mean by a dirty word. Conflict is dirty because it kind of connotates that you and your spouse are experiencing distance and disconnection in the relationship. So today we're going to kind of run the gambit of things to think about when you're struggling in conflict. And we're going to try and do kind of a dump, a psychoeducation class on conflict. And we're going to do it basically based on my practice and my personality and the things that I've observed and learned over the years of serving different couples in marriage therapy, as well as trying it out at home with my wife and with my kids. I've had conflict with my mother. I've had conflict with my father. I've had conflict with my brothers and sisters. There is no end to the amount of, I've had conflict with my boss. Oh my goodness. There's conflict everywhere. So all that to say, we're going to jump into the conflict episode and just kind of run away with this idea of conflict and try and really help to create a really strong foundational base for you to engage in conflict, for you to move through conflict well with your spouse, and for the conflict, the fighting, for the disagreements, the disconnection, for it to be more clear today, and for you to have a more clear path forward. These things are going to come on in no particular order, and they're going to kind of move through me as we kind of walk through these different principles and different perspectives. So, how we think about conflict really greatly influences how we move through conflict with our spouse, significant other, or just a kind of any person in our lives. If we are coming at a conflict with the understanding or the assumption that our spouse or partner doesn't have our best interest at heart, then our conversation is then informed by that lens, by that belief system. And as you can imagine, when someone comes into a conflict thinking this other person does not have my best interest at heart, they are very, very quickly going to turn to the four horsemen. And the four horsemen is a concept that John and Julie Gottman developed that basically spell disaster for relationships. Ergo, or i.e. the four horsemen, right? Like just like the four horsemen of the apocalypse, these are kind of the horsemen that lead to a marriage breaking down because they are very, very heavy, and they create a large burden on the connection system within a marriage. So they are stonewalling, which is shutting down, turning off, and not responding to your partner. Becca has done this before. I have never done this before, but Becca definitely did it one time. Defensiveness. This one I have done a lot, plenty of times, which is basically if you feel like your partner is not coming at you with your best interest at heart, then you very well may find the error in the thought or perspective or opinion or wound that they are bringing to you. And instead of hearing or seeing what they're bringing to you, you will instead hear the barbs and the arrows coming after you, and you will immediately need to defend yourself, because if a barb or arrow was flying at me, I also would raise my shield. The third horseman is criticism. This one can be very difficult and is a very, very common, unfortunately, horseman, where you attack this person that you are in relationship with by basically telling them all the things that they have done wrong. Criticizing and complaining are different. A complaint is basically something like, hey, I was, disappointed that you didn't get to the dishes today, and I was really hoping that would be done, and it makes me feel kind of overwhelmed to like have those there. That's like a complaint, like, oh man, that makes me feel this way. And there's a bit of vulnerability to it, but it's also like, hey, dude, you didn't get to the thing, or did Dad, I suppose, you didn't get to the thing that I was thinking about and maybe had asked you to get to. Complaints are okay. Criticism is more of a biting, more of a weighty, rift bringing kind of form of communication, where you're like, ugh, did you forget something again today? It seems like you lost your marbles, and The dishes never received the cleansing that I had requested. Do you even think about stuff like this? Like I think about this stuff all the time, and it's exhausting for you to never think about this stuff. You are so thoughtful. Whoops. I just switched into a compliment mode. Sorry. That's like my default mode. So I got to hotwire it away from that. But so so it's like, you're so thoughtless. You are so brainless. You're what a dumb thing to do. Attacking the person, attacking who they are, and not like calling out an action that caused a vulnerable feeling, right? Like disappointment, frustration, agitation. Instead of that, you're calling out this person for being wrong or bad, which is like criticism. And then contempt is like really hateful, spiteful language. So this would be like name calling, I would say like swearing and expletives, kind of out of control, like hateful language. I'm trying to think of like an example that would be an appropriate example. Like if you're getting to the point in your conflicts where you're like, you are the absolute worst, I despise you, you need to go live somewhere where you're loved, and you are the worst person to walk the face of the earth. So that would be like contempt. That would be like hateful, cutting, biting language. And you can tell, I mean, it feels so obvious, and it feels so like common sense to think that contempt, criticism, defensiveness, and stonewalling would spell disaster for your relationship. And I mean, that would be like any relationship, right? Like if your dad stonewalled you, maybe that would be a very good reason for that relationship to fall apart. If your mom was like super hypercritical all the time and always told you what you were doing wrong and never brought to the light of day what you did right, that would be very damaging and would create a huge rift that would probably, most likely be uncrossable. Same with defensiveness and contempt. If someone is contemptuous with you, that's pretty intense. Contempt is really intense. And then if defensiveness is really common in men. I would say that there's actually two that I think would be more male behaviors: defensiveness and stonewalling, although anybody can do it, you just take some practice. That's a joke. And criticism and contempt, I would say, well, at least criticism for sure, I would say it would be more feminine. Now, if you, please don't take any offense to that. I think that it's just, there's a higher likelihood for men and women to respond differently in conflict. Women tend to be, the ones in, there's differences in the way that men and women engage in conflict. And so, the male and the female actually plays a large role in the way that conflict runs. So going back to this idea that if your frame for your spouse is that they don't have your best interest at heart, then the way that you receive any of their communication, especially their negative communication, is going to be informed by that lens. And so the longer you have that lens, the harder it is going to be to feel seen, feel heard, feel understood, feel known. The longer that you hold on to that lens, the less likely it is that you are going to be able to avoid the bitterness that inevitably develops as a result of feeling like your partner doesn't have your best interest at heart. And it is going to break down your ability to have a healthy relationship. Intimacy tends to come from hard work, right? So intimacy tends to come not by default. You don't fall into intimacy. Intimacy comes as a result of you putting down yourself, not putting down yourself, but putting down yourself, your wants and desires and your thoughts and your feelings, and picking up the mantle of partnership and teamwork in your relationship and saying, instead of serving myself, I'm going to serve this other person. That is a recipe for really healthy living, healthy relationship. And especially like when that's reciprocated and there's two people doing that, that is an incredibly beautiful thing, and it creates a really beautiful relational dynamic. Now, we need to discuss abuse, and we're doing it a few minutes in here, and I probably should have started with this, but if you've gotten this far, I need to give a quick warning. If you are in an abusive relationship, if you're in a harmful relationship where contempt is there and you're being cut down and you're being name called and you're being sworn at and maybe there's raised voices and intense, destructive language, if you're feeling unsafe physically, if you're feeling a lack of safety in sharing relationally, then this advice in this episode for conflict is not for you. It's not for you because, and we've covered this before, but it's not for you because these principles cannot work under the umbrella of abuse. It only works, conflict only works when two people are willing to see themselves take ownership and responsibility for their part and seek to see the other person. And in an abusive relationship, that either will not happen or it will be manipulated and used to harm the other person. And if you are asking yourself the question, am I being abused? There's a great resource. It's called the Power and Control Wheel. Look up on images on DuckDuckGo, of course, so that Google can't track you. And you will find that there's this wheel of, I think it's 8 different sections of different dynamics that are present in an abusive relationship. We also always have the abuse line, the helpline, the federal one, in the show notes. And so if you're interested or need to look at that, please feel free to do so. Outside of abuse and outside of a lack of safety, we want to work toward a lens that sees our partner as positively intended toward us. And so if you're really stuck feeling like your partner doesn't have your best interest at heart, that is really probably where the repairing needs to start. There's something broken there, right? The trust system, there's a big wound that you're carrying that is causing your inability to see your partner's motivations and intentions towards you as positive. There's probably something deep going on there. And so my suggestion to you, if that's where you're at and you're really struggling with that lens of negativity and that they don't have your best interest at heart, I would highly suggest going and talking to somebody about that. So you could come on down to Counseling Care in Minnesota, or you could just, go on Psychology Today, and they've got tons of search filters on there. You can search for Christian resources. You can search for EMDR related resources. You can search for marriage related resources. You can look at bios and experience and all sorts of different things. And it might be helpful to check in with somebody. Maybe you just have a few sessions to work through, is this me? Are these relationship dynamics normal? Is this abusive? Obviously you're going to want to find somebody who's competent, and you're going to want to find somebody who does a good job of understanding your values and your stories and what you're looking for. But outside of that, and you might have to shop around a little bit, that's okay too. But outside of that, that might be a helpful place to start, because if your lens is stuck and you're feeling like, man, this person really does not have my best interest at heart, and everything that I feel like they're coming after me with feels very negative and hopeless and destructive or hurtful, that would be maybe a good sign to like pause and just get some professional help. Now, let's say we're not there. Let's say that we're really struggling with conflict, but it's not up at that level yet. And we're struggling to feel seen and heard. We're struggling to feel understood and acknowledged or known. But there's still this, there's this conflict that's causing that. So if in general, your partner is a safe person to bring issues up with, and you know that they have your best interest at heart, and sometimes even though you're not feeling it or you don't really see it, or sometimes you second guess that, which are all very normal, you still deep down acknowledge that this person loves you and wants what's best for you. Then what we want to do is update our frame to include that when we're thinking about the problems that we're having or the things that are leading to the disconnection. We want to update the frame from this person doesn't want to see, hear, understand, or know me. This person just wants, maybe this person is taking advantage of me. This person isn't pulling their weight. This person, all of these negative frames or belief systems inform the way that we're going to move through the conflict. So the frame that you put your partner in is really important. And understanding the beliefs around your frame and how those things are informing the way that you're able to see your partner and move through conflict is really important. Awareness building is one of my favorite tools in all of counseling and in all of marriage counseling, because when we can bring something from the unconscious or the subconscious or deeper down into the present moment, and we can acknowledge it, we oftentimes are taking away its power to affect the decisions that we're making and the dynamics that we have. And so if I know for sure that I've got this negative lens that I'm using for Rebecca, and I can assess that, I'm aware of that lens, and I'm aware that because I'm feeling a certain way or because I'm seeing her a certain way, I'm responding based on that lens. She doesn't have my best interest at heart. That's why she's telling me that she wants the dishes done. She doesn't have my best. She doesn't see me. She doesn't see all the things that I've done for the family. She doesn't see all the things that I've done for the kids today. She doesn't really understand that counseling is actually hard work sometimes, and it might leave me, tired and drained. And if I'm thinking that way, and then she brings up a genuine request, like, hey, I'm really tired, or I need something done, or hey, I can't cook dinner tonight, or hey, blah, 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 whatever that might be, where my belief system is at in that moment is going to inform my response. So you need to understand that there are these underlying filters that you're using for your spouse no matter what. And one way that we can transform our conflict is by updating our filters. So here's a set of filters that you could start to use for your spouse. 1, the first one, my spouse is well-intentioned toward me. I am well-intentioned toward them. That's a great place to start. I am well-meaning toward my spouse. My spouse is well-meaning toward me. I love my spouse. My spouse loves me. Even though I'm not feeling loved, my spouse loves me. I know that they do. If we have those filters, okay, and we receive a request, or we're told that we wounded our spouse, how might you imagine that someone responds when they've already come from the position that their spouse is well-intentioned, well-meaning, and loves them? If my spouse asks me to do the dishes and I believe all those 3 things, I'm not going to hear that I'm not enough and I haven't done enough for the family yet today by going to work and making dinner and putting the kids down and all of the things. What I'm going to hear is, oh, Becca is overwhelmed by the dishes, and she's asking if I have capacity to participate in those tonight. Those frames are so important because they inform our responses. So look at your frames, try to bring them into the conscious, try to understand what they're doing to your interpretation and your understanding of where this other person is coming from. If we've got our frames right and we know and understand that our person is well-intentioned, well-meaning, and loves us, then we do away with a lot of the erroneous assumptions that we can make that cause harsh, sharp, destructive responses in us and in our spouses. Now, it's not a catch-all, and it doesn't fix everything, but it's a really good place to start and to be aware of as you're moving through these conversations. Let's talk a little bit about normalcy in conflict. So if you didn't know, in a marital context, conflict is really normal. It is not abnormal, and anyone telling you that conflict is abnormal and you don't have to fight and you don't have to do X, Y, or Z, they're either playing with their terms, right? You don't have to fight. You never have to have conflict again. You just have to have hard conversations. Okay, well, that's not helpful. Or two, they're selling you something. They want you to purchase something from them. Now, we do not ask you to purchase anything from us yet. I'm not saying I will never ask you to purchase anything from me, but we do ask that you listen, enjoy the content, maybe let us know what you're enjoying, interact with us a little bit if you can, and maybe hit the 5-star thing on the thing and maybe write a little review on Apple Pod, just to get a little bit more of the word out there that this is a thing and this is here and that it's valuable. So if you think it's valuable, if you're getting any value whatsoever out of this, please just do that little step. It would really bless me. It would really bless us. That would be super, super beneficial. And we have a wicked episode coming up shortly. And so you're going to want to hear it and see it and listen to it. Oh, we also have a YouTube, I guess. You could subscribe to that. I don't really expect that to go anywhere, but you know what? Maybe it will. So they're either playing with their terms or they are just selling something, like a course or some other thing. And I'm not saying that those people are wrong or bad for either playing with terms, right? Sometimes updating a term can be helpful. Maybe conflict always meant explosion for you growing up, and so you just don't like the word. And so having somebody say that conflict, it doesn't have to happen in a marriage, and that instead you can just have these open dialogues, and an open dialogue is a great thing, and it doesn't have to be big and explosive and harsh. And maybe that's beneficial for you. And I'm not taking anything away from that. I genuinely believe that is beneficial because conflict, one thing that we're trying to do right now is normalize it, right? So conflict is normal. Hard conversations happen in every marriage. Joe Schmo and Cindy Lou Who, when they got married, they had lots of hard conversations. Now, it didn't look like explosiveness because obviously Cindy Lou is incredibly kind and polite and she would never become critical. And so, when they got married, they had hard conversations, lots of them. Even though there's sweetness and kindness in the relationship, lots of hard conversations because, Joe Schmo, sometimes he's a schmuck, sometimes he doesn't pick up after himself. And that makes, Cindy Lou feel kind of unseen or unheard. And so she has to bring it up to him. And she has to be like, hey, when you did that thing, it kind of hurt me. And then he has to, listen and respond. So it's normal. It's normal. Everybody has conflict. Everybody has hard conversations. You are not alone in that. It is okay. Abuse and harmful words and harmful things, that's not okay. And that's not appropriate. And that's not normal, right? So we'll call that out quick. but conflict is. Conflict is so normal. And if you've been listening for a little while, you're going to know this next part, so you can say it with me. Conflict is so normal that there is a large portion of conflict that is actually unresolvable, meaning that you are never going to get up to a place of resolution within this area. Okay, so I've talked a little bit about these areas for Becca and I. For Becca, there's this underlying fear that she deals with. And it comes out, it comes out really regularly throughout. It's come out thousands and thousands of times over the course of our marriage. And that's not a joke. That's not like, I don't even know if I'm being hyperbolic there. Thousands and thousands of times. And so we've had thousands and thousands of conversations surrounding this particular issue. So as we've talked that through, our goal isn't to resolve this underlying fear. The fear isn't necessarily just going to go away because it's part of the cracks in her half of the vase that she brought into the relationship. It's part of those cracks. So I can't cover them because I am not enough for her in every manner, way, shape, and form. And she, just like her, I have large cracks. So there are things about me, personality-wise, family of origin-wise, who I am, how I move through the world, being a man, all of these things. There are things about me that also cause conflict and that are unresolvable. And so John and Julie Gottman, as they studied couples over a large period of time, they discovered that couples kept having the same kind of conversation or the same topic of conversation over a large period of time. And the couples that were successful, the couples that did well, the masters, if you will, the masters of marriage, they moved through conflict by updating the way that they dialogued. They didn't resolve the underlying issue that was present in the beginning of the study. So as they studied it, right, those same issues came up and then they came back around years and years and years later. And so they discovered that unresolvable conflict is normal in marriage. Not only regular conflict is normal in marriage, but unresolvable conflict is normal in marriage. So if you think, man, we keep on hitting on this same issue over and over and over again, and we can't seem to get around it. We can't seem to get over it. There's no way over, around, through. That's okay. It's genuinely okay. The thing about marriage is that you are broken and your spouse is broken. And you've come together and parts of you cover parts of him and parts of him cover parts of you. But you can never, ever complete one another. You will never be enough for him and you will never be enough for her. You cannot hold within your person everything that the other person needs. You can't hold it. And so because you're imperfect and because you can't hold that, there's no way for you to ever complete your spouse. And the holes that are in this vase that you've created from within the relationship, the holes, the parts that you can see right through, that's where your unresolvable conflict lives. It's a part of who you are based on broken parts, broken bits, personality, upbringing, genetics, blah, 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 blah. The list goes on and on. That's where it comes from. When we can know and understand that conflict is a normal and unresolvable conflict too is also normal, we don't come at conflict like it is this evil, horrible, destructive, shouldn't be here kind of a thing. We do not have to avoid the conflict when we can acknowledge that conflict is in fact normal and healthy and provides a lot of benefit to our marriages. So what's the benefit of conflict? If we know that conflict is going to be there and that unresolvable conflict is going to come into play. You know what? We should do both. So we're going to talk about so the masters of marriage with unresolvable conflicts. Sorry, I'm just going to do this quick aside. The unresolvable conflicts, what they did was they improved the way that they talked about the unresolvable issues. Because they're always going to be there, if you can improve your humor around an unresolvable issue, if you can improve your listening, your acknowledgement, your understanding, your expressions of understanding, if you can improve your communication skills around that, if you can limit your defensiveness, bring that defensiveness around this issue way down. Because guess what? What I said before, it's not a reflection of you. This part of the unresolvable issue that your partner struggles with and that you respond negatively to, it is a reflection of two broken people. It's not a reflection of you. And when we feel like it's a reflection of us, it triggers the defensiveness, right? You are the reason I have this fear. If I absorb Becca's fear as some sort of indictment of something that I've done, and I used to do this all the time. You can go back and listen to years 1, 2, and 3. We talk a little bit about it. But I used to take on her fear constantly. If she was afraid, it meant that I did something horribly, terribly wrong. And in order to protect my ego, when I say that, not like an inflated, like a pride thing, but like my ego, like who I am, like a Freudian, the Freudian ego, that like, anyways, yeah, the super ego and the ego, I believe, that part of me that like needs to protect itself, to be like, dude, I know I didn't do the wrong thing that you're suggesting that I do. And she wasn't suggesting it, but she was afraid. And so instead of seeing her vulnerability back then, I would just take it on as an attack. So when we can slow down enough to understand that the unresolvable parts are not a reflection of some sort of issue or personal attack within me, and that there's a brokenness in the system that results in this same issue coming up over and over again, and not to take it personally and not to get defensive about it, but to understand it and to seek understanding, to seek connection, to see it as an opportunity for connection, then and to infuse it with humor and connection and, you know, whatever you can to limit the negative impact of that unresolvable conflict, then there's some success around that unresolvable conflict. All right, so we've updated the frames that we're using for our partner, right? And we understand that conflict is normal. And we also need to understand that conflict actually has a lot of benefit. Hard conversations transform marriages. Hard conversations transform marriages and lead to intimacy. All right? Write it on a t-shirt. Hard conversations. Now I'm going to forget it. Hard conversations. They are transformative and they lead to intimacy. We need them. Okay, so it's almost the principle of like you can do hard things, and hard things are more valuable. They are, anything worth having is worth working for, kind of that idea. The hard conversations in our marriages, there are parts of our brokenness that can actually be updated. So I get really angry whenever you bring up something that I've done wrong. Well, that's a part of us that's not ideal. And so marriage and conflict are really, really good tools that can be used to kind of soften those rough edges out of our personhood. Back in the day, we talked about the changes that we've made. I think it's called The Changes We've Made. And we talk a little bit about how Becca has changed me. I talk about how Becca has changed me and the benefits that I have seen as a result of her rubbing up against me. Not only have I received many children and have been blessed by her in that way, but also I have received this softening of my rough edges. I am a more patient person because of my wife and because I've had lots of opportunities to practice patience. I am a more empathetic person because of my wife. I am a more mindful, much more mindful. I'm a more confident person as a result of my wife transforming me and rubbing up against me and challenging my thinking and not challenging my intelligence, but sharpening my intelligence through conversation and connection and engagement. And she's helped me refine parts of me that were less than ideal. So conflict is an opportunity for growth. Hard conversations, if we want to use that euphemism, we can say hard conversations are an opportunity for growth. So you will grow if you can learn to engage in all of the hard conversations that need to be happening. And they really do need to be happening. Hard conversations need to happen because of what happens when they don't happen. What if we choose to avoid the conflicts that we see as necessary day to day? What happens to a relationship, to a set of people, when they decide, you know what, it's not worth it, I'm not going to engage in it, I'm just going to let it go, and then I'm going to bring it up next time we're in conflict, and I'm going to let them have it. Bitterness and resentment will grow. They will rot. The places that we put those unspoken conflicts within us, they get stinky and rotten and gross, and they act out, and they become contempt, and they become criticism, and they become stonewalling, and they become defensiveness. A surefire way to bring the horsemen out is to avoid the conflict that you know you need to be having. Caveat: in safety. So if your partner's going to lash out or explode at you when you bring up these conflicts, that's not safe, and that's not actually going to result in you being sharper and them being better and the relationship growing. So again, we've made some assumptions. Okay. We've made those assumptions about the filters, and we made the assumptions about the kind of the safety or my best interest at heart, well-meaning toward me, and has love for me. So yeah, just that's an important part of it. So you will be transformed. You'll be transformed by having those conversations, and they are necessary. Even though they're unresolvable, they're still necessary. So even your unresolvable issues still need to be brought up. The hurts, the slights, the miscommunications, the missed expectations, the difficulties, the struggles, all of those things need to be brought up. I heard a psychologist say, no issue is too small to be talked about. Like no conflict is too small. And what that guards against is this dynamic of building resentment and bitterness into your relationship. When you allow yourself to turn those small indications that you are struggling, or you are hurt, or you are having a difficult time, or you don't like what the partner is doing, those little things have a tendency to grow and spread and become really nasty and ugly. I'll give you a quick example. I was working with an individual whose partner was drinking a lot, and they were drinking consistently. And obviously we've talked about how drinking is a form of neglect. If you are misusing it, you're not taking care of your partner's interests, and you are not taking care of their needs, and you are not being present, and you're taking yourself out of the game. And so that is another obvious issue. But what was happening was one of the individuals was really upset about the drinking, but they weren't saying anything. And so it went on and on and on for years and years and years. And it inevitably created this huge backlash, this huge, intense, issue within the relationship. And it threatened to break everything. And now I'm not saying that if you have that conversation one time, that it's going to result in the situation getting better. Okay. There's this like a really harsh reality to certain behaviors, especially addictive behaviors, that even if you do bring it up and you bring it up well and you do it consistently over time, within an addiction, the brain is kind of corrupted, co-opted. And so it might be very, very, very difficult, and it might take a very long time to break through that. And you and only you can know and understand what you're going to do about that and what you're willing to do about that. So again, there's an exception there with addiction, that if someone is struggling with an addiction, their brain is being corrupted and co-opted and changed by this addiction, and they're struggling to break free from that. That is a next level. And it's one of those levels where addiction makes it very, very difficult for your partner to receive your influence. So even though you might be saying and doing the right things, conflict is not necessarily going to result in you getting what you need. Sometimes the next level, right, of issue, like an addiction, actually requires serious levels of treatment, accountability, psychoeducation, reading materials, going and seeking counseling, getting support for yourself. Sometimes there's ultimatums involved. I would get a lot of people involved. I would get a lot of people support. It's one of those things that will continue to worsen and grossen over time, especially if you do it by yourself. If you're going it alone and nobody knows about it, or just like a couple people know about it, but they don't really know what to do or how to help, professional help may be part of the equation that helps you through that season of your life and of your marriage. And marriages can recover from those things. But what marriages can't recover, to go back to what we were saying, is lots of little conflicts that go under the rug and get built up over time until you have an absolute mess and you don't know if things are salvageable, and you don't know if you're willing to put in the work to repair after all of the brokenness that all of those little conflicts have brought. I used an analogy in our previous conflict episode called 1,000 conflicts, which basically the idea is that every marriage has a ton of conflicts that they have to work through, and you can either work through them or you can create a huge massive mess and problem for yourself. So if you're interested in more conflict conversations, you can check that out. But basically, the theory was stated that all marriages have the exact same number of conflicts. And so if you are choosing to avoid your conflict, if you're choosing to set it aside, and it'll create this mountain, because you're shipping, what happens is you ship those conflicts forward in time, and you create a mountain of conflict for yourself eventually, right? And in time, they grow, and it creates this huge mound, okay? So you're walking along a path, and you just keep shipping these forward. You keep shipping these forward, not knowing that they're just building up in the future. And all of a sudden, eventually what you're going to do is you're going to run into the mountain. And that's when people say, wait, we've been walking along a path this whole time, and now we need to traverse this mountain, and we're not even feeling seen, heard, understood, and connected. I don't want to do that. I don't want to climb up. I don't want to go up. That's too much work. That's too much. I don't even feel connected to you. Why would I want to traverse the mountain with you? And you don't want that. You don't want to get to a point where you have this mountain of conflict and that you're ill prepared. That would be a moment that really sucks the life out of your marriage. And so be careful, be wary of that. You don't want to ship the conflict forward. You want to have it now. And Becca and I did a lot of conflict early on that was really ineffective and not done professionally. I don't know if we're professionals at all, but it wasn't done textbook. It wasn't done well. But the principle that we operated under was that no conflict is too small. We must talk about this thing because we are not connected, and we're not going to allow the small disconnections because we know that they're going to grow into big disconnections. So no, Like we are going to talk about this. We are going to talk about my feelings of hurt, or your feelings of hurt. We are going to talk about the difficulties that we're having, and the potentials for bitterness or resentment that we might feel growing. We're going to avoid all of that in order to do that. We know that we have to engage in all the conflicts and all of those hard conversations that come up. We alluded to this earlier, but there is definitely a difference between how men engage in conflict and how women engage in conflict. There is a bell curve. There's a deviation, standard deviation, which is a math term for the kind of the middle of the road, the average 50% of responses. If I'm getting that wrong, I do apologize. But there's a bell curve, right? So think of like anyways, look up a bell curve so that you can understand what I'm talking about of responses. So some people respond in the middle. Most people, 50% of people respond in the middle. 25% respond on the left-hand side, 25% on the right-hand side. There's a bell curve of responses in conflict. And so men and women, I would say tend to respond differently in conflict, but it's not like some crazy, ridiculous difference. And you can find some women on the right-hand side of the bell curve and some men on the left-hand side of the bell curve. And maybe that looks very similar. Also, personality has a lot to do with it. Family of origin, as we talked about, all those other differences that inform the way that we move through conflict and have hard conversations. So there's definitely a difference, and there's things that we're prone to. So men, you're prone to becoming defensive or checking out. And so you're prone to that. So that's the thing that you need to fight against. So when men handle their defensiveness well, then their conflict tends to be transformed and it tends to go better. If you can limit how much you're feeling defensive and how much you are coming across as defensive, and there's defensiveness in your communication, then you will have healthier conflict and you will increase your ability to feel intimacy with your wife. And intimacy leads not only emotional intimacy for your wife is going to lead to benefits and it's going to lead to good things elsewhere. It's positive. It's a good thing, and you should limit your defensiveness, not just so that you can have benefits, but so that you can also enjoy the benefit of being emotionally close and safe and connected with your spouse. The female kind of side of it, the feminine side, tends to fall into the more critical role where there's a lot of criticism surrounding roles, responsibilities, time at home, balls dropped. And, those things can be inverse. And I've met people all across the spectrum. That's probably some of the problem with like statistics and numbers is that you are an individual, you are not a statistic. And so when we say trends and blah, 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 and we're like men, you're struggling with this, and women, you're struggling. There's reality to it, but there's also what those numbers miss is the individuals within the context. And so if it's helpful to understand that men and women tend to struggle in certain areas and that normalizes it, and it helps you to understand yourself a little bit better, bring that awareness up, build the awareness up, then that's great. And then that's helpful. And so I would use that. And if it's not helpful and it's just like you just don't fall into that, that's okay too. The other principles and the other things that we're talking about still apply and can be beneficial for you. Another helpful tool that I have used recently within the counseling context would be something I would call fairness versus ownership. I was discussing a case with the KC, and we were talking through ownership and fairness. So essentially, the situation wasn't fair for the individual. It wasn't fair because they had to do something that the other partner wasn't being asked to do. And their strengths and weaknesses made them better equipped. It created a dynamic where they were better equipped to do this necessary thing in their relationship. And that wasn't fair. It wasn't fair to them to have to do the thing. And when we focus on what isn't fair in our relationships, we oftentimes create a sense of bitterness, resentment, or distance within our relationships. So if we focus on what is fair within the relationship, we often miss the intimacy, we miss the connection, we create problems. Fairness creates problems in marriage because we're different, because we're wired different, because we have different responsibilities, because we have struggles with different things, different strengths and weaknesses. There's often time that you are going to need to take ownership of something because you're the one who can, and that is not going to be fair. When we focus on fairness, we will always create disconnection and difficulty and difference in perspective. We'll create suffering in the difference in perspective. So instead, what we want to do is we want to create ownership. If you are the one in the relationship that does something really well or has a certain set of skills, it might be helpful to take the majority of the ownership in that area. Not within an unbalanced, abusive dynamic, but in a self-sacrificial dynamic. I'll give you a quick, for example. In our relationship, I am really bad at planning dates. I am bad at scheduling babysitters. I am bad at planning dates. And so for the vast majority of time, for the vast majority of our marriage, Becca has planned the vast majority of our dates. And I am extremely grateful for that fact. Now, if she takes that and says to herself, it is not fair that I have to plan and I have to coordinate all of the dates, and instead, I am not going to. I am not going to choose to plan the dates. I am not going to talk to Peter about how this isn't fair. I'm just going to allow him to plan all of the dates. And if they don't happen, they don't happen. And that's that. That attitude, that dynamic would be ultimately extremely destructive to our relationship. Now, the huge caveat there is Peter can plan dates. Peter has planned a date before. Peter does things that are intentional surrounding what we're going to do date to date. So don't get the wrong idea here, but there's a reality here. And there's a lens here that could be really hurtful and destructive to our relationship. The fairness lends itself to distance and kind of blame in the relationship. So when we can take ownership of the things that we do well and not create blame or resentment or this sense of unfairness, it's not fair for me to have to do this, then we can move through our relationships and our hard conversations and even our conflict in a much healthier, much more manageable way. At the end of a relationship, people stop fighting. At the end of a relationship, people say, it's not worth it. I have felt so deeply for so long about a certain topic, and it hasn't changed at all. And I am not willing to put any more emotional energy into that topic, and things calm down. They do. The eye of the storm has come and gone. The waves of the storm have come and gone. And there's this faux sense of peace. There's this like, all right, I stopped caring, and all of a sudden things got better. We're not fighting as much. We're not as angry with each other. We're not as irritable with each other. We're not so agitated. And it can feel good. It can feel nice to not have that same level of weight and intensity within the relationship. And I'm here to tell you that that is an incredibly dangerous and an incredibly destructive place to be. This is a warning against apathy. Apathy sets in when we try and become seen and heard on something over and over and over again for many, many years, and we don't ever break through, and we eventually have to stop caring. We can only care so much about something when our partners are not engaged in that, when our partners aren't hearing us in it. And so because of that, eventually that system gets so worn down that they have to stop. You have to stop. You have to stop. Stop caring. Not like it's inevitable, but just like it's likely for you to stop caring. If a couple walks into my office and they are fighting mad and they're angry and they're loud, that is okay. They're fighting because they want to be connected and they don't feel connected. They're fighting because they have a difference in perspective and they're having a really hard time righting the wrong, getting on the same page, and they just need they need some help. They're having this difficulty in their communication. They're missing each other in their communication, and it sucks. And so it's loud and it's brazen sometimes, and it's not pretty. But that's okay. Like, I don't mind that at all. I can sit there. I can weather that. With them. I can reflect to them what's going on. We can move through that. When a couple comes in and they've got this calm to them, it's an eerie calm. It's this weird, eerie calm that says, we're okay. We're fine. Nothing, like we're still alive and we're still here and we kind of want to make things better. So we came in to see if there's any way to make things better. And I have had many conversations and have had to have many conversations that go something like, hey, the body is the dead. I'm calling it. You can go and see another counselor and get a second opinion, but I'm going to let you know that apathy has set into your relationship and it has killed the relationship. You are no longer fighting. You are no longer engaging. There's no longer energy or momentum that is moving anywhere within the relationship. And we have to call it. So whatever that means to you to call it, we'll call it from here. And we will say we had a good run and we'll both choose to move forward in our lives. And you guys can do that if you so choose. And that'll be that. Don't ever get to a place in your marriage or your relationship where you're so apathetic that you're not willing to have a hard conversation. Don't ever allow yourself to turn off so far off that you won't allow yourself, or you're unable to engage your partner in hardship, in hard conversation. That is the end. It doesn't feel like the end. The end feels like the other, the explosive fights. That's what ends marriages. And it can, but it's really this lack of energy, this apathy that sets in toward your spouse that is almost impossible to revive. It's like bringing in a dead body and saying, hey, doc, any life in here left? I'm not a doctor. I'm just a counselor. That's a good clarification. And I would say no, it is not. So that is our episode for today. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for hanging out. We hope it was helpful. I don't know if I'm going to release it in 2 parts or not, so we'll do some editing. We'll see. Thank you so much for, I think I already said that. Anyways, this is not a phone call. We're not ending a phone call, but we're basically, this is the end.
When I got everything, I got you and me. All I want, I got all I need.
The conflict episode. If you've been anywhere near any kind of relationship, you've probably experienced some sort of conflict. Conflict can be a dirty word. It's one of those things that not 30 seconds in, and I already have a place to edit. Here we go. It's going to be a long night. All right, minute 1. Check. My pen's not working. There you go. Pen works. All right, minute 1. As a marriage counselor, and just a counselor in general, conflict is definitely something that I run into a lot of avoiders of. Conflict is definitely something that I run into a lot. And I also run into a lot of individuals who are running from conflict. Now, if they're running from conflict and they run into me, that can be a good thing. You know, maybe that would create a conflict that we could work through. But okay. Conflict is like what we call conflict. No. Conflict is essentially a distance in the connective, a distance that has conflict. We scrapped the first 2 minutes. Okay, let's scrap them.